A fair baby turned black sheep, a shocking tale of family betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimate revenge. I'm not really sure how to start this. I just figured I'd give it a shot since my friend won't stop raving about this site. Heads up though, it's kind of long because there's just so much to get off my chest. I'm Tina Freeman, 18 years old, born on January 29, 1990. My parents had already been married for 15 years by then, just not to each other. Yep, I'm the result of a 14-month office affair. Today was supposed to be my high school graduation party. I guess technically, it was. My parents decided to split the cost of the party, which basically meant splitting the effort. We had it at Two Springs Park here in Bellevue. Only my mom stayed the whole time. My parents have this unspoken rule where they avoid each other unless they absolutely have to exchange words about me. The party wasn't anything fancy. There was pizza, which was fine, definitely not in my top 10 favorite foods, but I wasn't about to complain. At least they got a cake with buttercream frosting this time, so I appreciated that. I've got a pretty big friend group, and about 12 of them showed up. Honestly, there wasn't enough food for everyone, which didn't really surprise me. I'd already figured it'd be that way. We wandered off to check out the trails for a bit, but I couldn't stay gone too long. If I left my mom alone for more than a few minutes, she'd start griping about it. After about 90 minutes, she was ready to call it a day. I wanted to leave with my friends, but that wasn't an option because my mom insisted I drive her in my old 2000 Dodge Neon. She didn't want to waste gas in her shiny new Escalade, and apparently, pumping gas is beneath her. Oh, and touching her car? Absolutely not. It's ridiculous. So, I drove her home and got to hear all about how ungrateful I seemed. When we got back, I opened my cards. My friends are seriously the best. They wrote the sweetest messages and gave me some money too. My mom and stepdad? $20. My dad and stepmom? $25. That's so typical of my dad, always trying to one-up my mom by the smallest margin possible. It's wild to think these two used to sneak around for months hooking up on some office couch. Now, they can't stand each other. None of my siblings bothered to come to the party or even send a card. Honestly, I'm used to it. They've never really made me feel like I mattered to them. I'll never forget being 8 years old and hearing 5 people who were supposed to care about me talk about how much of a burden I was. By the time I turned 11, I was just glad they were never asked to babysit me again. I know this probably sounds like a lot of whining, and maybe it is. These are definitely first-world problems. But I can't help feeling sad. It's always like this, like I don't really matter to anyone in my family. I didn't ask to be born out of their bad decisions, but somehow, I'm the one who gets stuck with the fallout. Anyway, let's move on from the pity party. My Aunt Dina came through in the best way yesterday. Her card had $150 in it. Honestly, I'm glad she lives so far away because it makes moments like this feel extra special. She and my 2 cousins are the only reason I actually like Christmas. I called to thank her, and we ended up talking for 2 hours. Both my cousins hopped on the call too, which was awesome. In just 3 months, I'll finally be living close to them and far, far away from this disaster of a situation. Of course, my parents are trying to guilt me about leaving, but I've heard it all before, so it barely registers anymore. The funniest part was my dad acting like me going out of state was why he wouldn't help with college. Like he was ever going to help in the first place. Speaking of college, I'm headed to the University of Missouri, go Tigers! I can't wait. My aunt and cousins live in a town nearby called Boonville, so I'll get to see them all the time. Mizzou was my first choice. I toured Iowa and Iowa State too, but neither came close. At Iowa, our guide was so obnoxious, the super condescending pole vaulter named Alicia. I don't even know anything about track, but now I've got a personal vendetta against pole vaulters because of her. Iowa State wasn't bad, but being near my aunt and cousins won out. I'm starting as a pre-med undergrad and plan to go to medical school to become the world's greatest plastic surgeon. It's been my dream since forever. Okay, maybe since my first episode of Grey's Anatomy, but still, I've wanted to be a doctor since I was a kid. August 15th is move-in day, and it's the first step toward Dr. Tina Freeman, MD, saving lives one boob job at a time. So here's why I'm writing all this. Am I being a jerk? One of my friends thinks my plan is kind of harsh. What I haven't told my parents is that once I move, I'm not coming back. I've got scholarships, and student loans will cover the rest. My aunt said I can stay with her during breaks and holidays, and I'll find a job in Colombia. I'm not asking my parents to help me move either. I'm leaving 2 days early, just packing up and going. I mean it. I'm not coming back to Nebraska. Ever. Would that make me a terrible person? Because honestly, I don't think I owe anyone an explanation. My whole life, I've been treated like an afterthought at best. The graduation party was just one example in a long line of the same trash behavior. Wow, I didn't expect so many kind responses. Thanks, y'all. I didn't think I was being a jerk either, but that one friend's comment had me second-guessing myself for a bit. All my other friends were like, "Girl, your family is straight up trash, so at least they're on my side." Since so many people wanted to know, I thought I'd fill in some of the details. I don't have the full story. Most of what I know, I've pieced together over the years from overheard arguments or little things people let slip. This mess started a long time ago. Let me give you the rundown on my dad first. My dad, Gary, is 57 now. He married my stepmom, Brenda, she's 52, way back in 1975. Fun fact, judging by the timing of their wedding and my oldest brother's birthday, I'd bet money they had to get married. Gary works for Mutual of Omaha and makes a lot of money, so Brenda stays home, always has. They have 2 kids, my brothers Luke, 32, and Logan, 30. Now, on to my mom. Her name's Melissa, and she's 56. She's married to Mark Williams, who's 58. Mark works for Kiewit, but I still couldn't tell you what he actually does. He's one of those guys who makes a decent living, whatever that means. My mom and Mark have 3 kids together, Jasmine, 32, Jenna, 29, and Josh, 26. Back in the day, my mom liked to brag about being a strong, independent woman before Mark came along. But when Jasmine was born, she gave up her job to stay home. That lasted until Josh started school. Then she got bored and decided to work at, wait for it, Mutual of Omaha. Yep, same company as my dad. I don't know how long it took for the affair to get going, but they kept it up for years. It finally blew up when my mom got pregnant with me. I only found out about some of the drama later in life, like the time my sister Jenna got mad at me when I was 7. I'd been playing with her makeup, and she snapped, "I wish Grandma hadn't stopped Mom from aborting you." Yeah. I don't know if that's true or just her being mean. The one picture I have with my grandma, though, she's smiling while holding me, so maybe she didn't hate me. She passed away when I was about 18 months old, so I'll never know. Anyway, by the time my mom found out she was pregnant, her marriage with Mark was already on shaky ground. Apparently, they weren't active at the time, so it was obvious I wasn't his kid. The affair nearly ended both their marriages, but in the end, they decided to patch things up, if you can even call it that. My parents made this agreement where I'd spend 1 week with my mom and the next with my dad, and they've stuck to it religiously ever since. No exceptions, no flexibility. The only time they break the rule is at Christmas. I get the 23rd and 24th with my dad's side and the 25th and 26th with my mom's side. From what I've overheard, both my parents lied to their spouses and said the affair was a one-time mistake. Mark, though, didn't buy it. He went full detective mode, digging through bank statements, finding hotel receipts, and even asking co-workers at Mutual about office gossip. Turns out people had been whispering about the affair long before he caught on. My mom finally gave up and admitted it wasn't just a fling. Mark got petty after that, too. He even dropped off a letter at Brenda's house, trying to blow up my dad's marriage. Nice try, Mark, but Brenda's not leaving her meal ticket. My dad probably still cheats on her, but she'll never leave him. The fallout from all this has been hanging over everyone's heads for 18 years. My step-parents love to bring up the affair whenever there's a fight. My dad spent his life trying to keep Brenda happy, which means dropping everything to cater to her. Meanwhile, Mark's guilt trips my mom whenever she leaves the house by herself, then interrogates her when she gets back. They both like to act like it's my fault their lives are so miserable, which is pretty rich considering I had no say in how I got here. My siblings? Oh, they've resented me since day one. They claim their parents are amazing and the house is peaceful when I'm not there, but when I'm around, the tension is unbearable. Neither of my step-parents likes me, and my siblings have made it clear they don't either. It's not just in the big things, like how I've never been invited to any of their weddings, it's the little stuff, too. For example, when I was a kid, my mom would take my sisters for mani-pedi days and call it a big girl thing. Once I got older, it became her catching up with her grown daughters. I've always been excluded. Vacations? Same deal. My mom and Mark took their kids to Disney when each of them turned 6. I've never been. My dad used to take everyone out to dinner for their birthdays, but for mine, it's always fast food, and usually just me and him. Sports, camps, hobbies, my siblings got all that. I didn't, unless it was through school or my parents needed to save face. Even now, with Josh getting married in September, I'm not invited because it's on one of my dad's weekends. I'm 18. The custody agreement doesn't matter anymore, but they're still using it as an excuse. Honestly, the only people in my family who've ever made me feel wanted are my Aunt Debbie, my dad's little sister, her husband, Henry, and my cousins, Diana and Daisy. Debbie is amazing, and she's been my lifeline growing up. Diana's 20, Daisy's my age, and Diana has a little boy named Ethan. He's 1.5 and the cutest kid ever. I only get to see them every other Christmas because they spend the rest in Norway with Henry's family. Last year, I stayed with them for 2 weeks, and it was the happiest I've ever been. That's why I'm counting down the days until I move to Missouri. I'll be near Aunt Debbie and my cousins, and I'll never have to deal with Nebraska or my so-called family again. I'm not even sure how long it'll take them to notice I haven't called or visited. But honestly, I don't think I care. Oh man, wait until you hear this. So, last year I told you all how I planned to cut off my family completely once I went to college, no visits, no calls, no nothing. Well, I stuck to it. I left town on August 13th, just 2 days before move-in day at college, and didn't give anyone a heads up. I didn't feel like I owed them one. The next day, August 14th, I got a text from my dad asking, "Where are you?" I replied, "At college in Columbia." That was it. He didn't say a word back. No good luck, no why didn't you tell us? Just radio silence. That was actually the last message I got from anyone in my family for nearly 2 months. Finally, on October 4th, my mom sent me a text asking if I was coming home for Thanksgiving. She added that they were going to Jamie's place in Lincoln, Nebraska, and said she didn't know if I'd want to make the extra drive. Lincoln is literally an hour from Bellevue, but okay. I didn't respond. I already had my answer about how long it would take them to actually reach out to me. A whole year went by, and you know how many messages I got? 3. That Thanksgiving text, and then one from each parent about Christmas plans. I didn't go home for the holidays, though, because Aunt Debbie and Uncle Henry were in Norway that year. Instead, I house sat for them, which was honestly a win. By spring semester, they didn't even bother reaching out. And honestly, I loved my first year away. I finally got to spend more time with my Aunt Debbie and my cousins than ever before. Being Auntie Teeny to little Ethan? Best thing ever. On top of that, I found a job as a hostess, made a few solid friends, and even met my boyfriend. He's also pre-med, so between classes and our jobs, we don't have a ton of free time. When we do hang out, it's usually the same 2 things, studying or, well, studying. You know what I mean. But here's where everything went to hell. My boyfriend suggested I get a credit card to start building credit, which made total sense to me. I already have a bank account, so I went to my branch and asked about cards for people with no credit history. They ran my credit, and guess what? I didn't have no history, I had a score of 415. 415. I didn't even know that was possible. Turns out, I have 2 defaulted credit cards under my name. One's maxed out at $3,000, and the other at $4,000. Both haven't been paid in over 6 months. None of it made sense until I dug deeper and saw the charges. Caterers. A DJ. Wedding expenses. That's when it hit me, Jamie's wedding. Yep, the one they planned so I couldn't be there. I called the credit card company, got a statement, and saw it plain as day. Furious doesn't even cover it. I called my mom, and she tried to downplay it, like it wasn't a big deal. I've never yelled at my mom before, but I lost it. I told her she stole from me. And what did she say? Oh, just that Mark needed extra money for the wedding and was going to pay it off. I told her the cards were defaulted, but she just kept making excuses. Then she had the audacity to say they were a bit overextended financially and needed a little help. That's when I really went off. I told her how messed up it was to steal from me, use that money for a wedding I wasn't even invited to, and then try to justify it. Her response? She claimed I was invited, I just didn't come. Total lie. Then she went into full guilt trip mode, talking about how family has to come through for each other, and how Mark cares for everyone and just needed a little help. Yeah, right. Mark has never cared about me. To him, I'm just the walking reminder that he couldn't keep his wife faithful. I told her she had 1 week to fix this and hung up the phone. That was 2 days ago, and I'm still seething. I can't believe they'd pull something like this. They've excluded me from everything my whole life, and now that I'm finally free, they steal from me? It's like I can never catch a break. I told Aunt Debbie about everything, and she said I should go to the police. Honestly, I'm seriously considering it. The day after my last update, I called the Bellevue police and reported my stepdad for identity theft. I didn't really know what to expect, but I went through the whole process on the phone and got as far as I could that day. Then, the following weekend, I made the drive up there to handle things in person. I had my credit card statements and had even called the catering company they used for Jamie's wedding. They didn't remember much, but they did have an order on file for Mark Whitmore. They also had a receipt showing he paid using a credit card in my name. Since then, I've been piecing together even more charges that he racked up using those cards. My Aunt Debbie has been a godsend through all of this, helping me track down info and making sure I stay on top of everything. She also suggested I go to my university and explain the situation because, let's be real, these vindictive people might try to screw me over by making false reports. So, I went to the school, laid it all out, and gave them a list of names to watch out for. Not too long after that, Mark got arrested. He's out on bond now, but let me tell you, the fallout has been a lot. My mom and all 3 of my siblings have been blowing up my phone. I haven't answered a single one of their calls, but the voicemails keep rolling in. First, they tried to play nice, saying it's all just a misunderstanding. Then came the gaslighting, the insults, the threats, you name it. None of it is working. I'm done. They've treated me like garbage my whole life and expected me to just keep taking it? Nope. Not this bitch, lol. Every voicemail they leave gets forwarded straight to the prosecutor. I'm not messing around. And if that wasn't enough, they've been running their mouths about me on social media, painting me as this horrible, ungrateful monster. I only found out because my cousin's been Facebook stalking them and giving me updates. So, you know what I did? I started posting about my actual childhood. Oh, they did not like that. Cue another round of angry voicemails. Guess they're not fans of being called out. But here's my favorite part, I let Mark's employer know what was going on. I wasn't sure if anything would come of it, but I figured they should know. I finished the email by saying, if he's willing to steal from his own stepdaughter, I wouldn't put it past him to steal from work. Mic drop. There's one weird twist in all this, though. My stepmom Brienne, yes, that Brienne has been sending me supportive messages. Like, actual nice things. This woman has never, ever said anything remotely kind to or about me. But now that I'm sticking it to the other woman, aka my mom, I guess I've finally earned her respect or something. Wild. So now, it's just a waiting game. The first court date isn't for a few months, and I'm beyond stressed. There's nothing else I can really do right now except keep sending the prosecutor anything new that comes up. In the meantime, I'm trying to focus on school and enjoy college as best I can. My boyfriend's been getting a little clingy, which is not helping, but overall, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. I can't wait for this to be over. Hopefully, when all is said and done, my mom and Mark will finally have to face the consequences of what they did. It's been a long time coming. This whole case took forever to wrap up, no surprise there. With all the continuances, delays, and back and forths, it dragged on for nearly 2 years. In the end, though, Mark Whitmore took a plea deal. I asked the prosecutor about my mom too, since she clearly knew what Mark had done. He explained that while they could technically pursue charges against her, it'd be much harder to prove. There was plenty of evidence showing Mark opened the cards and made all the charges himself, but my mom could just claim she didn't know until after the fact. It wasn't worth the time or cost to chase. I accepted that. What mattered most to me was that it was finally over. I got the debt completely expunged from my credit history and my score repaired. That alone felt like a victory. But the absolute best part? Getting to testify at Mark's sentencing. The judge let me unload years of trauma, my whole story about Mark, my mom, and my siblings. I didn't hold back, and honestly, it felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. Originally, Mark's plea deal was for 18 months in prison and a $15,000 fine. But the judge wasn't having it. He bumped it up to 30 months and a $20,000 fine. He even called Mark a bad father and an even worse man. Hearing those words? Pure satisfaction. My Aunt Debbie, Uncle Carl, and my cousins were all there, cheering me on the whole way. So was my boyfriend, not the same guy from before, by the way. There was actually another boyfriend in between, but the guy I'm with now has been amazing. We've only been dating for like 8 weeks, but he drove all the way up from Missouri just to support me. I had to physically stop myself from whooping when they walked Mark out in cuffs. My mom and siblings were bawling their eyes out and shooting me dirty looks, which was hilarious because my dad and Brianne were there too, and they were glaring right back at the Whitmores. I thought that would be the end of it, for a while, at least. The week after the sentencing, everything felt strangely calm. For 2 years, this case had been looming over me like a dark cloud. Now I was finally free of it. With just 1 semester left to graduate, okay, plus a bonus fall semester because life happens, I was ready to move forward. But of course, that peace didn't last long. The following Friday, I was walking back to my apartment after class when my entire family showed up on campus. Yep, my mom, Jasmine, Jada, Jamie, all 3 of their spouses, and even Jasmine's 2 kids. They weren't pulling any punches with this guilt trip. I agreed to sit down with them at a campus table, but there was no way I was bringing them to my apartment. While they were laying on the dramatics, I quickly texted my boyfriend to let him know what was going on. They wasted no time starting in with a sob story. My mom was already crying as Jasmine jumped in to finish for her. Basically, mom's in bad shape financially now that dad's in jail, and there's no income. I stared at her, unimpressed. It's been a week. Do you not have savings? Did you seriously not prepare for this? I mean, you had plenty of notice that Mark was going to prison. Jasmine kept pushing. They've been going through hard times for a while now, and defense costs were really high. We need you to help make this right. I blinked at her, stunned. I need to make this right? Is that supposed to be a joke? She didn't back down. Yes. It didn't have to go this far. We could have paid you back and cleared it up, but going straight to the police was selfish and disrespectful to the family that loved and cared for you. At that, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. That's when Jada, ever the hothead, chimed in. God, you were always such a brat. Just sign this damn paper already. Jamie shot her a look like, chill, but it didn't really matter. I raised an eyebrow. What paper? They pulled out a prepared statement for me to sign. It was a list of ridiculous claims about how everything I'd said during the case was false. It was the dumbest Hail Mary attempt I'd ever seen. Mark had already been sentenced. He was already in prison. What was the goal here? I glanced around at them. They'd kind of formed a horseshoe around me. There's no way I'm signing this. And if any of you try to forge my name, I'll go to the police, just like I did with Mark. Jada lost it. Yes, you are. We're not leaving until you do, and you're not going anywhere either. Right about then, my boyfriend showed up with two of our friends. You could see the shift on their faces as they realized they didn't have any power over me anymore. I picked up their ridiculous paper, walked right around them with my friends beside me, and threw it into the nearest trash can. Nobody said a word. Nobody followed us. That was about a month ago. Since then, I signed up for real estate notifications in Bellevue just out of curiosity. Sure enough, the house was listed for sale. To me, it felt like the final nail in the coffin. What's hilarious is that all three of my siblings and their spouses are doing fine financially. They could have helped mom save the house if they wanted to. But instead, they'd rather blame me for everything. Typical. Honestly, I hope I never hear from any of them again. I thought maybe this whole ordeal would lead to some kind of change with my dad's side of the family, but it didn't. They've been radio silent since the sentencing. I guess I served my purpose by taking down Melinda, and now it's back to pretending I don't exist. That's fine by me. I've got more now than I ever did when I was stuck with them. I'm going to focus on chasing my dreams and leave all their drama behind. Here's hoping they don't pull any more stunts, but if they do, I'll be ready.